Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me for today's webinar, Entry-Level Investing for People Who Are Ready to Get Started and Want Some Support to Get Going. I'm Debbie Sasson, financial planner and money coach. I've been a financial professional for over 30 years. If you don't know me, I started my career on Wall Street as a financial analyst at Goldman Sachs. And I like to say that I basically grew up on a trading floor, which is the place where all the action happens. I worked in New York and I worked in London until I moved to Israel 29 years ago. And then I started working at our central bank, investing the country's foreign currency reserves. And even though I was right in the thick of things and I understood all the financial jargon and I had access to really high caliber professionals, I still made some big investing mistakes, including losing about $50,000 on a really dumb investment that I made because I thought that I was a hot shot and I followed a hot tip, and it was really a bad move. And I say that openly to let you know that whatever you've done or you haven't done with your money, whatever mistakes you've made, it's okay. There's really no shame. And even if you haven't gotten started investing your money, because if anybody should have known better, it was me. But I was young and I was naive and maybe been a little bit stupid. And I didn't know any better. I messed up. And you know what? That's really how we get smart with our money. It's by messing up and learning. And we do it better the second time and the third time and the fourth time around. Now, 9 years ago, that was about a year after the birth of my 8th child, I was burnt out and I really needed to slow down. So I left the central bank where I'd been working for 18 years and I transitioned into personal financial planning and money coaching. And today I help people take charge of their money and make better financial decisions and grow their wealth. And I would like to now take a moment to recognize everybody who is here on the webinar with us today, because I know that investing can be scary to people. They don't understand the jargon and they feel totally clueless. And a lot of people, even if they have investment managers or brokers who are managing their money, they hate dealing with them. It just feels so uncomfortable. So really, if you're in the room with us, I salute your courage and your desire and hopefully even your enthusiasm to take the next step, to start investing, and to take control of your financial future. Now, before we get into the webinar, let me just give you a few housekeeping things. If you have a question, please pop it into the chat box. If I can answer your questions during the course of the webinar, then I will. I'll try my best to answer them. If I can't, then I'll try to circle back at the end of the webinar and answer all the questions that there may be. The second thing is, some people asked me if I'm going to be talking about real estate investing or property investing, and the short answer is no. This webinar is about entry-level investing, and although I do believe that owning property can be a great addition to a diversified investment portfolio, today's webinar is about entry-level investing. And usually when you're investing in real estate or property, it's a large investment. You need a lot of money to get started. You might even need to take a loan, take on some debt. So that's not the focus of our webinar this evening. So if that's what you came for, then I apologize if that's not what you're going to be getting tonight. And finally, if you really connect with what you're hearing tonight or today, depending on where you're calling from, and you feel that it makes sense for you and you would like to take the next step to becoming a confident and empowered investor, then at the end of the webinar, I will be sharing with you a new course that I've created to help you take charge of your investments and your financial future. So let's dive in. All right, here's the only graph that I'm going to show you today. I wanted to start by just giving you a little bit of history of the financial markets. I'm going to try very hard not to get too techy or too geeky about this stuff. This is a very long history, 117 years of the United States stock market. And as you can see, if we just take a broad brush stroke look at the stock market, the overall trend is up, right? And you may have heard some, people say that the stock market always goes up. If you hold on to your stocks long enough, the market always goes up. And, over very long periods of time, that's certainly true. Of course, if we look at, this red area, highlighted area over here on the bottom left of the graph, this is the 1929 stock market crash. There was a huge, 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 huge drop in the value of the stocks for anybody who was holding on to them at that point. And if someone had his or her wealth all invested in the stock market and was relying on that to live out his or her retirement, that would have seriously impacted their financial future. If, however, someone had the wherewithal to wait out until the stock market recovered, you can see that over a 3-year period of time, the market dropped and then it started going up again. Here it went up sharply, it dropped some more, and then the markets went up and up and up and up through the 40s, 50s, 60s. And yeah, there is some volatility along the way. It's not a straight line going up. There are ups and downs. And then here, this period is the 80s when things were really, really booming. And then we move along to maybe the dot-com crash over here in 1999, 2000. And then over in this red circled area, this is the great financial crash of 2008. And that's the one that is most familiar in our minds. And even today, people are still nervous about that crash. We tend to hold on to major events for a long, long time. But if people weren't really scared of the stock markets and they had either gotten back into the markets or they didn't sell their stock investments, but they'd held on to them, you can see by the continuing trend of the markets that the markets went back up. And today, in the middle of 2017, the United States stock market is at all-time highs. Okay, now let me move on to the next slide. This is a chart, and I like to call this my Jack and Jill example. And this is we're going to talk about now the importance of starting to invest in stocks early. And I'm going to assume that, or starting to invest early, not necessarily stocks. I'm going to assume that these investors, my friends Jack and Jill, they get an average of 8% annual return on their investments. And if you'd like to have a little bit of comparison, the long-term average return on stock investments is about 9.5% to 10%. So I've tempered it a little bit. It's not quite that 10%. Most people don't put all of their money into stocks. They'll put some of it and put some money into other investments. Okay, so let's look at our friend Jack here. And Jack is a savvy investor. He learned about the financial markets very early on in life. And at the age of 20, Jack committed to putting $2,000 a year into his investment account. And Jack did that every year consistently for 45 years until he got to 65 years old, until he got to his retirement age. And if we look at how Jack's little small investments in the market every year grew and grew and grew and earned interest upon interest upon interest, at the end of 45 years, Jack's money had grown to $773,000. And if you do the quick math, right, 45 years, $2,000 a year, Jack put a total of $90,000 into his investments. And because of what we call the magic of compound interest, right, his money earned interest upon interest upon interest upon interest. Jack's money, his initial $90,000 investment, was able to grow to over $700,000 over the course of time. Now, Jack has a friend. We're going to call his friend Jill, because Jack and Jill always go together. And Jill, she couldn't start at age 20. She was busy. She was in college. Nobody taught her about financial markets. But lucky for Jill, she got started also at a young age. Jill got started investing at the age of 25, and she also committed to $2,000 a year. But because she started 5 years later than Jack, number one, she was only able to put in $80,000 until she got to her 65-year-old retirement age. And because she was short 5 years of compound interest, Jill's money was only able to grow to $518,000. right? That's still a beautiful return on $80,000. Nobody's going to say, wow, they're not, nobody's going to turn that away. But that 5-year period, that 5-year difference in investment period, that's over $250,000 of lost growth to their to Jill's investment portfolio. So this example here is really, really showing you and emphasizing the importance of getting going with your investing as early as possible. Okay, so when we talk about investing, and again, at the beginning, I said, people are nervous, they're scared, they don't understand what's going on with the financial markets, and they hesitate or they resist getting involved. What I find, or what I found through my experience, is that there are really 3 pillars that an investor needs to be able to stay in the markets and invest with confidence over time. Number 1 is money mindset. Number 2 are money habits. And number 3 is money education. And actually, when I first transitioned into financial planning, I thought it was about money education, or mostly about money education, that, all people had to do was sit down and have a meeting with their financial advisor and understand what's the difference between stocks and bonds, and the charts that I showed you, how the markets always go up and get started early, and that would be enough. But I soon learned that people can be very emotional and, as I said, resistant and hesitant to investing in the market, and that holds them back. So let's move on and talk a little bit about money mindset and what blocks people from getting involved in investing. Okay, so as we've talked about, number 1, it's scary. People look at the charts that I showed, they hear the news reports that the market is risky, and they know people who've lost money in the markets, and they're like, no, I'm not getting involved in stocks. It's too risky, and I don't want to lose my fortune. So they're blocked from that point of view, and they don't want to go ahead. Number 2, as we talked about, the language. They don't understand stocks, bonds. How are they going to manage that? And you know what? I get that. I understand it. Anytime we're doing something new, we have to learn the language. None of us were born knowing any language, right? We were born saying Google Gaga, and we have to learn how to speak the language of our parents, the language of the country that we live in. And these days, a lot of people are on computers, and we all have to learn the tech language of computers. Someone who's coding has to learn HTML or whatever it is. We learn the language for the skills that we need and for the things that are important to us and which affect our lives. So, for example, when my husband was sick with cancer 14 years ago, and thank God today he's okay, we had to learn a new medical language. Like, I had never been confronted with what's the difference between a seminoma cancerous growth and a non-seminoma cancerous growth. And at that time, I knew what the difference was, or, on my layman's level, we knew what it meant for our lives. So again, investing is something that's really, really important for your financial future and the way that you can take care of yourself and your family for the future. And it's important to really show up and spend some time learning the language. It's really, really not that complicated. Number 3, it's not my zone of genius. Sorry, I just had a drink of water. And this is something that I often hear from women, like, that's not my thing. A woman can manage the budget for her house really, really well, know how to be a smart shopper and get the best deals, and know which supermarket town is having the sales. But when it comes to investing for the long term, women often say, that's not my thing. I don't know math. Again, the tech is a stumbling block for them, or the lingo. I'm going to leave that to my husband, to my partner. I'm going to leave it to my financial manager to deal with. And, again, I don't think that it's rocket science. It doesn't have to be that complicated. I actually think that women have a block to a large extent because in our generation, we don't have a lot of role models. We don't necessarily have mothers who were involved investing in the markets, because until very, very recently, the woman was the stay-at-home mom, or she wasn't so much involved in the financial markets. And until the 50s or 60s, when the feminist movement really opened a lot of doors and opened a lot of possibilities for women, the women were really the ones who were only in charge of the house. They may have had a job as a teacher or a secretary or something like that, but they weren't doing, on average, the sort of higher powered jobs that they're doing today. So we as women don't have role models, and because we didn't see that modeled as we were growing up, it's not familiar. Not that we can't do it. And in fact, the research shows that when women do get involved investing, they're actually better investors than the men. And why is that? Is because a lot of times we'll understand the importance of investing and holding on to our investments for a long time. And as we saw in the very beginning, that graph that goes up and up and up and up over the long term, woman has that staying power, and she's willing to let her investments ride, where the men are much more impulsive on average again, and they're jumping in and out of the markets and trying to outsmart the markets. So I am very strongly of the opinion that investing and being a smart investor is definitely the realm of women and everybody. Most people that I know, when they've had a little bit of time to get experience, they can be very, very good, confident investors. Okay, point number 4, the financial system is corrupt. Yeah, we've all, seen the Wall Street movies or read what's going on in the markets, and we feel strongly that we don't want to get involved in Wall Street and finances and stocks because it's all a corrupt system. But you know what? This is the system that we have, and we have to just learn the signs to look out for. If we remember, for example, the Ponzi scheme, Bernie Madoff in 2008 in the financial crisis, and how he swindled the investors. It does seem that there were signs that people who questioned what was going on, that it's very unusual to have consistent positive returns over the long, long time. There were like no losing months in what he was showing. But people, because of greed, they are unwilling to look at the facts. So, this is the system we have. When we're going to talk a little bit later exactly what stocks are, but this is the system that we deal with, that we have at our disposal, and this is one very strong way of growing our wealth for the future. And point number 5, the final mindset block that people have, is that they don't have time. And what I think is that when there's something that's really important to us, we make the time to take care of it, right? People make time for their jobs, they make time for their exercise, they make time to go to the movies, to go to the theater, whatever they do. Anything that's important, we somehow or other figure out how to slip it in to our 24-hour days. And this is really important. This is how you take care of yourself by, you're investing for the future so you can take care of your future self. So you want to make sure that taking care of your money has a place in your schedule. All right, so let's, hit the wrong thing here. Sorry about that. Wait a second, share screen. Sorry. Okay, let's move on to point number 2, which the second pillar of being a confident investor is having strong money habits. So if you are haphazard about your money and your spending, you really don't know what's coming in and what's going out and where all your money is going, it's going to be challenging for you to regularly and consistently set aside money like our friends Jack and Jill and put that into an investment account, because sometimes you do have money spare, sometimes you don't. And in order to have strong money habits, you need to prioritize. You need to realize that you are important and your financial future is important. And so you want to carve out space in your regular spending plan so that you have money for your future. And that involves point number 2, being able to distinguish and differentiate between your needs and your wants. You know, yes, we all need to eat, and we all need a roof over our head, and we need electricity, and we need clothes, and we need to educate our children. But there's so many wants that come into our day-to-day, month-to-month, you know, year-to-year personal, like financial spending plans, that it's a real need and, you know, and a real want to be able to take care of ourselves. So, you know, and not just today and not just tomorrow, but also in 10 years from now and 20 years from now. And we want to be able to take care of our kids, right? We want to be able to educate them in the future. And we want to be able to help them to set up their houses, and we want to pay for their weddings. So taking care of our money and our investments is a real need, and it needs to find a place in your monthly spending plan. And part of the way you do that is bullet point number 3 is to pay yourself first, right? When you get money in from your employer, or if you're self-employed, when you have money coming into your account because you've earned, take the cream off of the top and say, I'm important. My financial future is important, and I'm going to pay myself first. I'm going to take this money and I'm going to invest it for my future self. Okay, bullet point number 4, and this is a great way to make sure that you never have to take money, or almost never, hopefully, out of your investments, right? Is you need to set aside money for safety net. You know, unexpected things happen, emergencies happen. You know, you might need to replace the tires on your car. You might need some unexpected medical care, health care, I don't know, pet care if you have an animal that needs to be dealt with, plumbing in your home. There are all sorts of things that happen on a regular basis. And if you have money that's set aside in an account just for the unexpected, just for whoopsies, as my dad says, right? For things that are unexpected, then when something happens, you won't have to dip into your investments. You know, when we saw that chart in the beginning, the markets go down, you don't want to sell your investments when they're at a loss. You want to be able to hold on to them and ride the wave back up again. So make sure that you have a little cushion on the side. And similar to that, I always like to advise my clients. A second, let me get some water. I advise my clients to have a financial freedom account. And this is for fun things that could happen in your life, right? All of a sudden, you know, you might be, a friend of yours would say, oh, let's go to the theater. Or you might have some low price tickets to go to Europe for you know, a long weekend or something like that. Or maybe there's a conference that you want to attend. It's always good to have some money that's set aside for things that are exciting and new, again, unexpected, but something that lets you feel good about your life and lets you feel free. You don't want to feel trapped by your money, and money's that thing that's preventing you from doing what you want. Okay, now bullet point number 6, under-earning. And this is something that women are often in this category of under-earning. I think many of us have heard about the concept of a wage gap, that if there is the same job, you know, and a woman and a man are both doing the same job, a woman will get paid less. She'll get paid whether it's 69 cents on the dollar or 77 cents on the dollar, whatever it is. You know, it's a reality of our life. I'm not going to, you know, talk about how we can close that wage gap. That's way beyond the webinar today. But as a woman, it's important to realize that one of the greatest ways that you can take care of yourself is to get out of this pattern of under-earning. What often happens is people will move from one job to another job after, let's say, 2 years, and that's a way of bumping up your salary. So even if you're comfortable and you like your job, you know, but you want to be able to take better care of yourself in the future and you want to bring in some more money, consider doing something, you know, the same or different by moving to, you know, something similar in your field, even moving sideways to a different employer. Another possibility is if you're self-employed, check when was the last time you raised your rates, right? It could be it's time for you to raise your rates. And I know that as a woman, we really love the work that we do as self-employed people, and we want to help the clients that we're serving, but we also need to take care of ourselves. And it's time, maybe, if you haven't done it for the last 2, 3, 4 years, maybe it's time for you to raise your rates so that you can take better care of yourself and not take care only of other people. And the final point is that it's really important, again, for you to be an active participant in your money management. I understand that people maybe want to outsource the management of their investments to others, and they want to hire an investment manager or broker, someone who can help them. But don't just outsource it and then say, that's it, I've taken care of it, it's somebody else's job to deal with. Look at your financial statements, ask questions, try and understand what's going on so that you know if things are going well, if they're not going well. And what I find actually really fascinating is when people come to me and I'm doing an intake on a new client, and I ask them, what's really important to you? What are your goals? And one of the most common phrases that I hear from my new financial planning clients is that they want to make sure that they're not going to become a financial burden to their kids. And I understand that. I get that. I wouldn't want my kids to have to, pay for my care. So how do you think is a great way for that to happen? If you don't want to be a financial burden to your kids, make sure that you take care of your finances today. Again, be an active participant in your money management so that you understand if your investments are going well, if they're not going well, if your financial manager is making strong decisions or not. Because unfortunately, when folks are left to their own devices and they're not so much in contact with their clients, things may be happening that are not in your best interest. So stay connected, stay in touch, and know if what's going on is good for you. Okay, so with all of these bullet points that I brought up, and maybe you have some other habits that you have around your finances, what I'm inviting you to do is to take a deeper look and find out what's standing in your way. What's preventing you from creating financial change? Do you need to reduce your spending? Do you need to consistently set aside, make it $50 a month, for your investments? Make a commitment to one small change from all of those, 6 different bullet points that I put up there before. Do you have a financial manager? When was the last time you looked at your financial statements? Maybe today is the day you're going to go into the drawer, pull out your financial statements, and it might even look like Chinese or Greek to you the first time you look at it, right? It might not be might not be so easy, but just get started. Start doing one little thing to make you a more confident investor for the future. And this is one of my favorite expressions, right? And that is, taking care of your money is exquisite self-care. So, women, as women, we know how to take care of ourselves. We go for massages and facials and manicures, and we get our hair dyed. We know how to take care of ourselves, but taking care of our money is the ultimate. It's better than all of those other things, because when our money is taken care of, it reduces stress. And stress around money is something that, according to the American Psychological Association, over 70% of people report that they have stress around their money. So I want you to be part of that 30%. Take care of your money, because that is the ultimate in self-care. All right, pillar number 3, money education. So we're going to get maybe a little bit detailed now and talk about different kinds of financial instruments, because I also find when I speak with people, I'm meeting with my financial planning clients, and I say, do you know what the difference is between a stock and a bond? And it's interesting that both men and women, shake their heads and say, no, nobody ever really told us about that. So let me let you in on this big secret today. Okay, a stock is what we call an ownership interest in a company, right? So let's say you buy stock in Coca-Cola. If you own some, and by the way, stocks and shares, those are different terms. They're used in different parts of the world, but they're basically the same thing. It means that you own part of a company. So if you own stocks or shares in Coca-Cola, you're an owner. That means that when Coca-Cola is profitable, the value of what you own goes up. If, for example, the global economy is shrinking and there's worry that Coca-Cola is going to make lower sales, nobody's buying, the stock market dropped, right, whatever. So the value of your ownership interest in Coca-Cola drops. So if you own stock in any company, it could be Coca-Cola, it could be IBM, it could be Apple Computer, it could be Citibank, whatever it is, then you own a little bit of that company. Another major or common type of investment vehicle is something that we call bonds. And I actually got my start on Wall Street on the bond trading floor. And a bond is another name for a loan. So when Coca-Cola, for example, wants to build a new bottling plant in China or wherever their next bottling plant is going to be, that's a lot of money. And many companies are not don't have, like, let's say it's $1 million. I don't know what it costs to open up a bottling plant, but let's say for argument's sake, they need to borrow the money from somewhere. So they can go to their bank and they can say, dear banker, this is what we want to do. How much would it cost? What's the interest rate that we would have to pay you to lend us $1 million? And the other alternative that Coca-Cola has is to go out to a bunch of investors like you and like me, and we can lend the money to Coca-Cola. And we do that by buying bonds. And when we buy a bond, we basically have a piece of paper. Today it's a piece of virtual paper, a line in a computer, but basically says that we lent Coca-Cola money and they owe us that money back. And most of us are familiar with these kind of loans because of, let's say, mortgages. The bank lends us money and then we buy a house with it. So, and then we pay the bank back. So this is the same thing that a bond is. Coca-Cola or IBM or whatever, they borrow money from a bunch of different investors, and the sum total of all of those little loans that they've gotten, will come out to the money that they need to build their new bottling plant. So stocks and bonds are the main financial instruments or main financial investments that people have in their investment portfolios. Let's talk about something else, a mutual fund or an ETF. ETF is short for exchange traded funds. So mutual funds and ETFs are both funds, and so that's what I'm going to call them for the purposes of our webinar. And a fund is a collection of different investments in one convenient investment vehicle. And I like to make an analogy because I think it makes it easier to understand. And I liken funds to those nice little plastic containers of salad that you get when you go to the supermarket. So for example, you can go to the supermarket and you can buy your lettuce and your tomatoes and your cucumbers and your peppers and your mushrooms and your onions and your carrots, and you can chop up the salad all by yourself and you can make the salad that you like. Or you can buy one of those pre-prepared salads in a plastic container. And what a mutual fund is, or an ETF, that is that plastic container that contains a bunch of different investments already packaged in one nice vehicle. And there are funds that have only stocks in them, there are funds that have only bonds in them, and there are funds that contain both stocks and bonds. Okay, so that's the sort of tech part of the webinar this evening. Now, if you go and you buy mutual funds or stocks or bonds, you need to keep them somewhere. Once upon a time, people would get a piece of paper that actually showed them that, hey, you own these stocks or you own these bonds. But today, we don't do it the same way as we did once upon a time. People today open up investment accounts, And one low-cost way of opening an investment account is to do it with a discount brokerage house where you are paying relatively minimal fees. And in the United States, some of the more common and discount investment brokers are Schwab and Fidelity and Vanguard and TD Ameritrade. And if you're calling in from a different country, listening in from a different country today, so if you want to ask if I happen to know, but different countries have different discount brokerage houses. In Israel, the system is a little bit different, so there are investment houses that offer a sort of lower cost do-it-yourself investment platform, but it's not like we have something called a discount brokerage house like they do in the United States. And usually with these discount brokerage houses in the United States, for example, you can start investing with, let's say, $1,000 as the minimum, right? In Israel, because of we're a small country and we don't have the same economies of scale, and our banking system runs a little bit differently here, in order to make it cost effective, if you want to start investing by yourself using a do-it-yourself investment platform, it usually means that you need to start with about 20,000 shekels, which is getting close to $6,000. But that shouldn't dissuade you. That sort of like high mark shouldn't dissuade you from getting started. It might delay your getting started. It might take you a few more years. But again, look back at that chart of our friends Jack and Jill, and whenever you get started, the sooner the better. So you might have some hurdles to overcome, but that should not delay you from doing what really, really needs to be done so that you can take care of yourself for the future. Now, bullet point number 3 is something it's very interesting, something called micro investing. And this is the new kid on the block. It's really the last couple of years that micro investing is becoming popular. And what it means is that you can start investing via an app. And people have apps on their phones these days where you can put little teeny bits of money into the financial markets. And let me just give you actually some names of micro investing apps. And if it's relevant to you, you can go and look them up. In the United States, you have Acorns and Stash and Robinhood. In England, you have Moneybox. In Canada, there's Milo. And in Australia, if anybody from Australia is listening, they also have Acorns. And what these apps let you do is, sometimes what they do is they take some spending that you've done, and let's say you spent, I don't know, $83.27. They'll round it up to $84 or $85, and they will put that extra residual amount of money into an investment. So, and you get to choose, again, you get to choose your, mutual funds. So, and you can define for yourself how you want to invest your money, but little bits at a time, you can start building up your beautiful, gorgeous investment, investments for your future with just taking teeny tiny baby steps by looking into and starting up with micro investing. Now, finally, let's talk about the difference between passive and active investing. And I'm going to start by defining for you active investing. And I think this is something that people might be familiar with. When you hire an investment manager or a broker, you are putting your hopes in that person who is going to invest your money very, very well for your future. And that investment broker is deciding, is IBM better than Microsoft? Is Apple better than Dell? Is Coca-Cola better than Pepsi? They might be deciding which investments are the best ones for you. And today they might decide that it's really good to invest in airplanes because everybody's traveling. And tomorrow they might decide to invest in banks because, banks are good. That's a good, what we call sector of the economy. Basically, your investment manager is deciding all the time what to buy and what to sell on your behalf. Now, of course, if you are hiring an investment manager to do the work for you and they're buying and selling there are costs involved in that type of investing. You have to pay the investment manager, and every time he or she buys or sells an investment, there are commissions for buying and selling. And all that turnover that you have in the account, which keeps it active, right? That's active investing. There are costs to that. And over time, it's very, 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 very unlikely that any investment manager who is actively managing an investment portfolio, very unlikely that he or she will be able to beat the market. And when I say market, again, think about that graph that we saw at the very beginning of the webinar. That was the United States stock market. And there is an index that basically portrays to us, reflects to us what the market is doing. And because of the costs involved, it's hard, as I said, if not impossible, for an investment manager to beat the market, because the market doesn't have any costs. It just is what it is. And not only is it very, very difficult to beat the market, 20 years before we want to get our money out of our long-term investments, we don't even know which investment manager is going to be the one who beats the market. Someone might have a great track record, but we don't know how they're going to continue to do over the long term. Or you might decide to use, one investment manager, one brokerage house for your investments, and the person who's managing your money might retire. They might get a job somewhere else. They might move state. They might not continue managing your money for the next 20 or 30 or 40 years. So even if you find someone with a great track record, there's no guarantee that that manager is going to be with you for the long, long term. So what's the alternative to active investing? That's something that we call passive investing. And that means you basically buy the market, right? There are special funds, mutual fund or ETF, that are created to mimic the market. It's an index that follows the market, and it's all generated by computer algorithms. So you don't need any investment manager with a fancy office and a fancy car and a fancy salary. You don't need to pay anybody to manage your money. You just need to buy an index that follows the market. And that's what we call passive investing. And there are mutual funds or ETFs that follow the US stock market, the Israeli stock market, the Canadian stock market, England. There are many different indices all over the world. In Japan, there's the Nikkei. And there are also market-based indices for stocks and also for bonds. And your ability to invest in an index significantly simplifies the process. And over time, most index-based passive investment portfolios will beat active investing. If you're happy to have the market, own the market as we call it, you'll beat an active investment manager 80% of the time. And you know what? That's about a B+. I think that I would be happy with a B+ on my investments for the long, long term. So let's try to sum it all up now. Okay, if you don't have any questions. And, what I've said, I think, throughout the webinar is that taking charge of your money and shaping your financial future requires that you take ownership of your money mindset, your money habits, and your investment your money education for the long term. Now, if this is something that you would like to do or continue on doing, as I said in the very beginning of the webinar, I recently created a self-study course, and it's called the 1K Investor. And if you are interested in continuing, this course involves three pre-recorded training modules, and there are accompanying worksheets with thought-provoking exercises, and they're easy and they're actionable to help you take greater leadership and ownership of your money and your investing for the future. There's also a dedicated Facebook community. So if you have questions about investing or about money management and you don't understand something, you're invited to come into the Facebook community and ask questions. And you get me. I'm pretty compassionate. I'm there to help you, hold your hand, and guide you through it so that you will feel more empowered and more confident to take charge of your financial future. And for folks who invest in this program, the 1K Investor, you will, I guarantee you that you're going to feel more financial confidence and empowerment with your money as you go through the course. You should be developing stronger money habits. Of course, you're going to understand financial jargon because that's something that I think is important. We all need to know what's going on with our money so that we can take care of yourselves. And I believe that you will be able to begin your investing journey. And what that will enable you to do is take care of yourself and your family for a long, long time. That is the goal of becoming an empowered investor. So if you are interested, then I recommend that this is the URL for the course that you can see here. The investment at the moment for the 1K Investor self-study course is $36. It's a very reduced introductory price, and that price is available for the next 5 days until September 10th. And then after that, the price is going to go up to $72. If you would like some more information about the 1K Investor course, then feel free to go to that website, debbiesasson.thinkific.com/courses/invest. There you go. They've put it into the chat box for us. Okay. And if anybody has any questions about investing or about the course, I'm here. I'll stay on the line, and I, want to thank you very, very much for joining me today for the webinar, Entry-Level Investing for People Who Are Ready to Get Started. So yeah, go ahead. Maybe what I can do is I'll turn on my video. I can't turn on my video. Okay, but I'm here to answer questions. If you'd like to ask me questions, please feel free and put your questions into the chat box. I'm here for you. Are there micro investment apps recommended for use in Israel? At the moment, I have not found any micro investment apps in Israel. So unfortunately, that is one avenue of investing that's not yet available to us. So I would like to hope that in the future we will have micro-investing apps, Shoshana. We certainly are on the cutting edge of technology in Israel, so hopefully we will have an app at sometime in the future. Okay, let me see if I can turn my video on. There you go. Right. I guess to do that I need to stop sharing my screen. Hi. So if anybody has any other questions, you can feel free to put them into the chat box, and I'm happy to answer any more questions if somebody has a question. Tax implication for U.S. citizens living in Israel. Yeah, so the taxes are pretty simple. Any mutual fund that is issued outside of the United States, that qualifies as something that we call a PFIC, a passive foreign investment company. And any U.S. citizen who is living out of the United States, and you could be in Israel, you could be in England, whatever it is, don't buy mutual funds that are issued outside of the United States, because the tax reporting and the tax treatment of those mutual funds is onerous. You just don't want to do it. Stay away from mutual funds issued outside the United States. You can buy stocks issued out of the United States without a problem. You can buy bonds that are issued outside of the United States. Most of the accountants with whom I've spoken in Israel feel very, very comfortable about ETFs, but that's an accounting question, and you need to speak directly with your accountant. Okay. Thanks, Aviva. Any other questions for us today? Okay, so if there are no more questions, I'm going to say thank you to everybody who has tuned into the webinar today. You will get a email in the next day or so with the replay. So if you wanted to go back and do a rerun of it, if you want any more information about the 1K Investor course, I look forward to getting that material to you as soon as possible. So thank you very much for joining us with the webinar today. Bye.